Coming up next, you've requested it for months, and here it is. I'm going to shift into high gear with the ultimate soundtrack to power your next road trip. On this episode, we're cranking up the volume and celebrating the top 5 driving songs of the rock era that turn every journey into an epic adventure. Along the way, we've got some songs here that caused a lot of havoc in their day, including one that caused the most speeding tickets in history. And there's another one that was held out of the number 1 spot because a factory couldn't make enough copies of it. Plus one that is now one of the most iconic hard rock songs ever. But at the time, nobody would play it because the band was too controversial. In fact, MTV made this band a deal they'd play the song one time at 4 a.m. And so many fans called in to request it after that, they tied up the switchboard for days. It went on to make the album one of the biggest ever, selling 30 million copies. And finally, a song that was written as a slow ballad until a hard rock band sped up the song and made it the greatest driving song ever. See if you can guess my number 1 next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember trying to collect enough courage to jump off the high diving board when you were a kid at the pool, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. I know that you'll find something to dig on this channel. We got a lot of great interviews coming up. Also, check us out at professorofrock.com and sign up there for more content. I got to tell you, I never drive without listening to music. It's hard for me to be a passenger in a car where there's not music playing. Something I've enjoyed since I can remember. Driving, that means turning it up to 11 with your favorite songs. When you take an Uber, you're kind of at the mercy of the Uber driver. Anyway, today we've got the top 5 driving songs of the rock era, and I'm excited to hear what you think of these picks, and I want to hear your picks as well. Before we get into the top 5, I got to start with an honorable mention. It was tough to leave this one out. I just had to find a way to fit it in. There's so many great driving songs, but I got Radar Love, the ominous rock masterpiece from Golden Earring. Radar Love is far from being a conventional rock song. It's kind of like a mini suite with a bunch of different sections that each bring their own vibe to the song's accelerating power. And you know what? The band developed the song piece by piece, so it makes sense. Rhinus Gerritsen, the band's bass player, dropped in with the intro, a moody little groove that mirrored the part coming in after the drums. Even though it was all basically improvised, the whole song, the arrangement clicked as they scripted the whole thing out. So the lyrics were finished in a couple of hours because he was kind of waiting for the music to come together. I want to talk about the last line in verse 2, which has become a famous misheard lyric. Now, the actual lyric is speeding to a new sunrise. But because of lead singer Barry Hayes' inflection, it sounds like he's saying speeding to a nude sunrise. Great stuff. And I'm speeding into a nude sunrise. So Barry did confirm the common interpretation that the song is about death. At the time, he was fascinated by extrasensory perception, ESP, which inspired the story of a man who shares a psychic bond with his lover, even after death. She says the cable coming in from above. Even though he wrote it on the fly, Barry pulled off some effortlessly cool poetic rhymes. You know, I love the line, "I've been driving all night, my hands wet on the wheel. There's a voice in my head that drives my heel." There's a voice in my head that drives my heel. And it wasn't just clever wordplay. He managed to tie it all into a powerful story about a mysterious, almost supernatural bond, like I said, between two lovers separated by distance. Maybe even death. The lyric, "The radio's playing some forgotten song, Brenda Lee's Coming On Strong," that's a nod to Brenda Lee's 1966 hit, Coming On Strong, which climbed to number 11 in the US. Feel the heartaches coming on strong. It's actually the last thing the driver hears on the radio during his desperate high-speed journey right before everything comes to the tragic end. Brenda Lee's coming on strong. Radar Love, with its hypnotic chugging bass line, its striking riffs, and anthemic chorus, make it a perfect song to put the pedal to the metal on the open road. It was Golden Earring's second number 1 single in the Netherlands. It also busted a number 10 in Canada, number 7 in the UK, and number 5 in Germany. It was the band's breakthrough in America, peaking at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the early summer of 1974.
Red alert.
And of course, they were a one-hit wonder for a few years until they had a hit in the 80s with Twilight Zone. And this song, get this, it's caused more speeding tickets than any other song in history, at least according to a survey in the 90s. So getting into our top 5 countdown, with our honorable mention, I've got to go into our number 5 spot. If you'll take your place at the driver's seat with Sniffing the Tears at number 5.
Driver's seat. Driver's seat.
The story of Driver's Seat goes all the way back to the mid-70s when singer guitarist Paul Roberts, he recorded a demo for a French record label that had just signed him. Now, it didn't go anywhere, but a few years later, drummer and producer Luigi Salvoni had helped gather the musicians for that first demo session, was revisiting the tapes, and he heard some real potential there. He reached out to Paul with an idea. Why not try shopping the song around and see if they could land a deal? But when the phone call came, Paul was not concentrating on being a rock star or singer at all. He was focused on being a painter. Here's what Paul told me in my interview with him about Driver's Seat. I understand, though, that when it came out in the UK, they were on strike at the record.
Well, yeah, we did Top of the Pops, which is great. You know, to do Top of the Pops, you're sort of guaranteed. But what happens is that everybody, this is the nature of pop music in those days when people bought records, was that you sort of, you rushed out and got it, But the EMI pressing plant went on strike at that precise moment, so you literally couldn't buy it, for sort of 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, you just couldn't get it. So it lost a lot of momentum.
Had a pop culture renaissance in 1991 in Holland. Went all the way to number 1 so many years later.
The only place we were ever number 1, I think. That was fantastic.
Now this one absolutely should have been a number 1 hit, but because the factory shut down because of the strike and they couldn't print this song, people couldn't buy it, and that cost it number 1. But the song found new life in that same country in 1991 thanks to a high-profile TV and radio ad for Pioneer. The song came roaring back and hit number 1.
Pioneer Car Audio.
It also made waves internationally, reaching number 17 in Canada, number 13 in Australia, and number 15 here on the Billboard Hot 100. Not bad for a track that almost got left behind on an old demo tape. Coming up next on our countdown of the top 5 driving songs, we're going to run down the road, loosen our load just a little bit, and take it easy with the Eagles at number 4.
Easy, take it easy.
With arguably the greatest opening line in rock history.
Trying to loosen my load, I got 7 women on my mind.
Now, Jackson Browne started writing Take It Easy in 1971. The plan was for him to put the song on his self-titled debut album. But he ran into trouble finishing it. Back in the early days before they became musical celebrities, Jackson Browne and Glenn Frey kept bumping into each other around the LA music scene. I actually lived in the same apartment complex down from each other. Both were regulars at the local clubs, often jumping up for open mic nights. Now, it was one of those tight-knit circles where everybody knew everybody back in those days, or at least knew their songs or each other. One day, Glenn dropped by the studio where Jackson was working, and he stopped in just to say hi. Jackson played him a rough idea that he'd been working on, a song called Take It Easy. Glenn Frey immediately loved it, and he asked Jackson if he was planning on putting it on his debut album. Jackson said he didn't think that he'd get it finished in time, and Glenn, he kept pressing him about it. He liked the vibe so much, he just couldn't let it go. Eventually, when Jackson still hadn't wrapped it up, Glenn offered to finish it himself. Now, at first, Jackson Browne resisted. It was his song after all. But after Glenn persisted a few more times, Jackson finally gave him the green light. Go ahead and finish it. See what you can do with it. Jackson relented and Glenn jumped right on it. And now not only did he finish the tune, he took it to another level entirely. He even arranged it in a way that Jackson later admitted that was far better than anything he'd imagined.
Your own wheels drive you crazy.
Glenn Frey had a knack for catchy lines, and when he was helping Jackson finish Take It Easy, he came up with one that would become so iconic. It's a girl, my lord, in a flatbed Ford, slowing down to take a look at me.
In a flatbed Ford, slowing down to take a look at me.
He came up with the line, recalling something that Jackson had told him that actually happened on the road trip that was, what inspired the song at all. And that lyric landed right in the middle of a verse that was rooted in that moment that happened. So years earlier, during a trip to Sedona, Jackson's 1953 Willys Jeep broke down in a small town called Winslow, Arizona. This was supposed to be a quick stop, and it turned into a painful delay with Jackson waiting all day to get this Jeep finished so he could drive home. Now, stuck in that sleepy town, he watched the world go by, people watching. Or people, cars, and the girl in the flatbed Ford. And that day in Winslow became a snapshot in time, and with Glenn's help, it turned into one of the most recognizable verses in rock history.
Well, I'm standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona.
And now there's actually a tribute in that very place in Winslow, Arizona. It's a life-size bronze statue and mural, what they officially named the Standing on the Corner Park. So the statue captures a laid-back figure with an acoustic guitar resting between his right hand and his boot, and just standing casually under a vintage-style street lamp. And above him, a sign shaped like a U.S. Route highway shield reads simply, "Standing on the corner," right? Starting the lyric out. And now, when a fire damaged that mural in 2004, the Eagles actually stepped in and donated a signed guitar that was raffled off to help cover those repairs. Now today, the park still draws crowds. It even hosts an annual festival, all thanks to a song that turned a moment of bad luck in the small town of Winslow into a timeless piece of rock history.
We may lose and we may win.
In fact, Jackson's Jeep broke down again on the way home, and he had to hitchhike. And he wrote most of the song on the way home in the backseat of a stranger's car. Now, Take It Easy was the track that kicked off the historic Eagles' legacy. Before that, they were the backing band for icon Linda Ronstadt. And they formed their own band after that, and they ended up surpassing her in popularity, starting with this very song. The debut single, Take It Easy, went as high as number 8 in Canada, number 16 in South Africa, and number 12 here on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1972.
Love is gonna save me.
For number 3 on our countdown, we're about to enter the jungle, baby. With Guns N' Roses, Welcome to the Jungle.
Welcome to the jungle.
Welcome to the Jungle, it wasn't just a song. It was a warning. A snarling high-voltage postcard from the underbelly of L.A. While many came to the city of angels chasing fame and fortune, Guns N' Roses, they'd seen what lurked beneath the glamour. They lived it. And we love to crank up the car stereo and drive to this song. Brace yourself for this one. A lot of people forget this. Surprisingly, when Welcome to the Jungle was first released as a single in 1987 off Appetite for Destruction, and the band and the album itself, it completely flopped. It was a total flop. I mean, despite the efforts of David Geffen's promotional team, no one could break this band on radio or TV. This album had barely registered. It had sold a modest 200,000 copies. Guns N' Roses were stuck. They weren't getting any exposure on radio or MTV. Now, back then, half of the network's cable outlets were owned by ultra-right conservative John Malone. He warned MTV that if they played any dangerous junkie bands, that's what he called it, he would drop the channel from all of his cable affiliates in a heartbeat. This was a real threat. And with Guns N' Roses' hedonistic reputation working against them, the band was completely blacklisted from MTV. At this point, David Geffen felt that Guns N' Roses, their debut was done. They'd just do better on their next album. Geffen's CEO, Ed Rosenblatt, he called Tom Zutaut, the band who signed Guns N' Roses, into his office, and he told him it was over. That Tom should start thinking about the band's next album. Now, Zutaut, he dug in. He put his career on the line, and he went over Rosenblatt's head and begged David Geffen to call in a favor to MTV. So moved by his A&R man's faith, David Geffen called MTV's Tom Freston, the CEO. He asked him to lift the ban on this rookie band. Now, the CEO, he agreed to lift the ban for one time, one exception. He would give Welcome to the Jungle one shot in the middle of the night, 4 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Pretty much the worst time slot that he could think of. When David Geffen told Tom the news, this A&R man was devastated, but he accepted it. That was it. Appetite was really finished. So to commemorate all that they'd done so far, Zootot stayed up all night with the band to watch the video and celebrate their 5 minutes of fame. You know where you are! But a funny thing happened. That one graveyard showing of Welcome to the Jungle made Guns N' Roses overnight sensations. Now, after the video aired, viewers bombarded MTV with calls demanding repeat plays. It tied up their switchboard for almost a week. The next day, like I said, the phones were ringing off the hook. Even at the record company. When Zootot came into work, he was shocked to discover that his Hail Mary was a winner. Guns N' Roses had finally made it. Within days, Welcome to the Jungle was MTV's most requested video. Thrown into heavy rotation, Guns N' Roses completely blew up. Appetite for Destruction went from 200,000 units sold to 1 million practically overnight. And in time, it would become the highest selling debut record of all time, moving 18 million copies in the US and over 30 million worldwide. And Jungle, it lit the fuse, the video for Jungle. And the song ended up going to number 14 in Ireland, number 13 in Finland, number 24 in the UK, number 6 in New Zealand, and number 7 here on the Billboard Hot 100. Ultimately, though, the single itself sold over 3 million units in the US and almost 1.5 in the UK. No sooner do we get out of the jungle, we flirt with disaster once again with an exciting thrill ride piloted by the king of the movie soundtrack, Kenny Loggins. And number 2, I've got, well, we enter the danger zone. That danger zone became the heartbeat of Top Gun's high-octane action scenes when the film hit theaters in '86 with Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer. Rest in peace. Exploded into a full-blown cultural phenomenon. It was a defining moment for a generation. Kenny Loggins shared the interesting story of how the song made it to him, and he was definitely not the first choice.
Danger Zone was not a song I was supposed to do. Initially, as I understand it, they had some other act. You probably know.
Toto, Bryan Adams. I don't know if Bryan Adams was going to do Danger Zone, but they wanted to do a song on it, but he didn't want to do it because it had to do with war. And then it was Toto, though. I think they were going to have Toto do it.
I thought it was Toto, too, but I heard recently that it was some other act with a rock, edgy voice.
We got offered Danger Zone to do that song for the Top Gun soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Before we even done Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now, it was before that. We'd never done anything for a movie or movie soundtrack. And so I got sent the song, and I loved the song. I thought it was just great. I thought it would be a perfect vehicle for Starship. We talked about it, and there was some feeling in the band that maybe the movie was a little too, pro, gung-ho, war, glorified, And, maybe it wasn't, maybe it was. I don't know. I guess with the mentality of the Jefferson Starship and with the history of the band, and the kind of things that we felt we had to be true to, stand for, we did pass on it. Kenny had a huge hit with it, and it was great for him too. It was perfect.
He sounded great.
Now it's kind of hard to imagine how it could have been done any better than what Kenny did with it.
So I was in the studio, and Giorgio reached out to my A&R guy at Columbia and said, "Can you get Kenny Loggins in here because I need a singer yesterday." They were already dropping music into the movie, and they didn't have a voice for that.
Even though the words Top Gun never appeared in the lyrics, Danger Zone became inseparable from the film's identity, including the sequel, Top Gun Maverick. The second that synth line kicks in, you're right back in the cockpit, engines roaring, adrenaline spiking. For me and for many others from my generation, that track still flips an energy switch. It went to number 12 in Germany and New Zealand, number 7 in Canada, number 6 in Switzerland, and was a number 2 smash here in the Hot 100. All right, we've been cruising along with our countdown of the top 5 driving songs, and we've come to the summit of our journey. And number 1, it's a no-brainer. I got to go with Born to Be Wild by Steppenwolf.
Born to be wild.
So it was a sunny day on Hollywood Boulevard when Mars Bonfire, then known as Dennis Edmonton, had a moment that would shape rock history. He was walking down the bustling street when his eyes landed on a striking poster in a window. It showed a motorcycle bursting out of the earth like a fiery volcano. The bold words, "Born to Ride." Those stared back at him, and then it hit him like a lightning bolt.
Nature's child, we were born to be wild.
Now, around that same time, Dennis had just bought his first car, a humble secondhand Ford Falcon. And now the sense of freedom that he felt driving around, able to go wherever he wanted, filled him with joy and with exhilaration as he thought about the imagery of that motorcycle and this new experience of independence. The lyrics began to take shape. What if he could fuse the thrill of the open road with the wild energy that he felt right in that very moment? Well, the result was Born to Be Wild, a song that would become a timeless manifesto for the free-spirited.
Get your motor running.
The path to success, though, was anything but straightforward. When Dennis pitched the song to Leeds Music, where he worked as a staff writer, it did not immediately stand out. In fact, it was one of the lesser songs he'd submitted. He remembers the song being dismissed altogether at first, just another track in a pile of tracks. But fate had its own plans. It was a fluke, really, that Born to Be Wild found its way to Steppenwolf, a band that was fronted by his brother Jerry Edmonton. They'd heard something special in it. And before long, the song was released as a single by the band, skyrocketing into rock and roll legend.
Head out on the highway, looking for adventure.
But a couple things happened before that made it the song it is now. Now, Dennis wrote other songs for the band, Ride With Me and Tenderness, but Born to Be Wild was the one that truly took off and made this band who they were. Again, his name now Mars. He was a member of the Sparrows, which was the predecessor to Steppenwolf. He actually offered the song to other bands before that, such as The Human Expression, before it was presented to his brother Jerry, like I said, was a drummer of Steppenwolf. This is why I love music history and the stories behind songs so much, because the most fascinating part for me of the Born to Be Wild legacy is that the song was originally a folk ballad. And again, I said this before, but it was loosely based on a beat-up Ford Falcon that Mars Bonfire drove. I mean, this jam and rock anthem wasn't even close to the song that we cherish today. Steppenwolf frontman John Kay vividly remembers the moment that Mars Bonfire first played in Born to Be Wild. At that point, the song was a far cry from the anthem that it would later become, the one we know.
Looking for adventure, and whatever comes our way.
Mars had written it as a quiet, introspective ballad, a reflection on the solitude and freedom of life on the open road. And it just had a completely different vibe. It was more contemplative and mellow. It was a ballad. At first, John thought it was a good song, but he didn't really feel anything special about it. It was just another song. But when John and the rest of Steppenwolf started to work on this, the track dramatically shifted. The band took the raw essence of Mars's lyrics and completely transformed them. The tempo, that was cranked up. It was faster and the energy was just unleashed. And what had started out as a soft ballad was turned into a high-octane rock powerhouse. The quiet reflections, those were replaced with thunderous riffs and that unmistakable driving beat. Now the song wasn't just about the open road anymore. It was about the raw freedom and reckless energy that came with it. What emerged was a turbocharged rock masterpiece, a song that would eventually become a rallying cry for the wild at heart. It was a perfect storm of vision and transformation and timing. Steppenwolf with their hard-edged sound made it something just revolutionary. It's so cool what they did with this. Born to be Wild, it never actually mentions motorcycles in the lyrics, of course, but somehow it's become inseparable from the world of bikers, right? Of course, that connection began when it was featured in the iconic 1969 film Easy Rider, a counterculture, trailblazing film that starred Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda. The film follows two bikers as they travel from Los Angeles to New Orleans, and Steppenwolf's song became the soundtrack to that journey.
Head out on the highway.
First, the song wasn't even intended for the film. When Easy Rider was in production, Peter Fonda, he had his heart set on Crosby, Stills, and Nash to handle the soundtrack, the whole thing. But when the film's editor dropped Born to be Wild into a rough cut of the movie, it was just uncanny. The energy of the song fit perfectly with the spirit of the film, and it quickly became clear that nothing else was going to capture the wild, untamed essence of those motorcycle riding characters. It was just definitive.
Looking for adventure and whatever comes our way.
Mars Bonfire's lyrics, specifically the line Heavy Metal Thunder, they're often credited with being the first use of the term heavy metal in rock music, although at the time it wasn't referring to a genre, but rather the roar of a motorcycle engine.
Lightning. Heavy metal thunder.
Born to be Wild was so much more than a song, though. It became a cultural symbol, like I said, especially for the biker lifestyle. With its unforgettable use in Easy Rider, the song became forever linked to the image of freedom and rebellion and the open road. It was originally a B-side, but then a DJ turned the record over and other DJs followed suit, and it became a smash. It went to number 2 in America, to number 30 in the UK, number 20 in Germany, and it was much bigger than its chart position of number 2 because, like I said, it's a touchstone.
Born to be wild.
So we've crossed the finish line for our countdown of the top 5 driving songs. And this is going to be an interesting discussion because one that I left out that I really wanted to put in here was Panama, Van Halen. There were a couple other ones.
Hot shoe, burning down the avenue. Model citizen. Who's gonna drive you home?
But what do you think? What are your top 5 driving songs? What are your memories of these songs? What are the songs that really make you accelerate? Let's have a great discussion. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. We would love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.